Welcome to the Japan Zoominar at UC San Diego. I'm Ulrike Schede and I'm the host of today's session. I'm a professor at, I should probably turn this on as a screen share. I'm a professor at GPS, the School of Global Policy and Strategy at UC San Diego. If you are interested in our programs, which by the way includes an MIA with a Japan specialization, please go to gps.ucsd.edu. At GPS, we have a Japan Center. It's called Japan Forum for Innovation and Technology. And we conduct research and create meeting opportunities between Southern California and Japan. If you're interested in our activities, please visit jfit.ucsd.edu. I also have my own website if you're interested in commentary and what's going on in Japan. From my view, it's the japanologist.com. At JFIT, we run a Japan Zoominar, where you are. Today, of course, we're going to talk about energy. If I lose you before the end of the show and you won't hear my announcement for next week, be aware that we're going to talk about Ruth Benedict and the study of Japanese culture with Professor Amy Borovoy from Princeton University. And then the following week, we will shift to robotics, who may not have any culture or heart. We will talk about Japan's competitiveness in the digital transformation with Alberto Moel from VO Robotics. All right, so today it's energy, and let me stop my share so that you can see my guests as I introduce them. Those of you who are regulars may think, why are you doing energy again? Didn't you just do energy? And indeed, on July 7th, we had Mr. Nobuo Tanaka, the former executive director of the IEA here, IEA, yes. And Tanaka-san said, well, together with his partner, Jeff Rector, said, well, Japan doesn't have an energy plan. There's an institutional paralysis, and Tanaka-san even had some choice words for the good bureaucrats of the Ministry of Economic Trade and Industry, and he is, by the way, today in the audience. And so Tanaka-san really invited a rebuttal. And I thought there's no better person to lead this rebuttal that Japan has no energy plan, but Mr. Masakazu Toyoda, who is the CEO and chairman of the Institute of Energy Economics of Japan. It's ranked as one of the 2 best energy research institutes in the world. And this makes Toyoda-san one of the most important people in Japan energy planning, bar none. Toyoda-san spent 33 years at the Ministry of Economic Trade and Industry. He was involved in the trade negotiations. And I actually talk about you, Toyoda-san, in my class when I teach negotiations, because I understand you're still good friends with Ira Shapiro, who was the USTR representative on the other side. You managed to separate the issue from the people. You also spent some time at the IEA in Paris. You were in the Prime Minister's office. You were in charge of the space office activities of Japan, and now you've been at Eniken, as it is known in Japan, the Energy Kenkyujo, for 10 years. You were a frequent visitor to the United States. You've actually visited us in our Center for Global Transformation, and we met about 20 years ago when the former governor and mayor of San Diego, Pete Wilson, invited both of us to a task force to discuss California-Japan relations. I believe you were in the trade office at the time. Thank you, Toyoda-san, to make time your busy schedule and join us here today. It's great to have you. When the 2 of us thought we would do this, you also suggested that we should have somebody from industry, because energy, after all, is also a business, and it is a mighty difficult business. Even though the users may be captive and the rates may be fixed, it's still a mighty difficult business to run. And so I called on my good friend Kenji Tateiwa, who is at TEPCO. Kenji is a nuclear engineer from Kyoto University. He spent 4 years in the TEPCO nuclear division before he went to Stanford to earn his MBA. You see his Stanford sign in the back there. That's when we met. It's about 20 years ago. He then returned to TEPCO's international division and spent a lot of time on a project in Houston, the South Texas project, I understand it is. So this was all nuclear. Which made you an important person after the Fukushima incident when you moved to the DC office of TEPCO to be the information conduit liaison between TEPCO and the government here. You then returned, and now you are at TEPCO Power Grid, which is in charge of the transmission. So it's great to have you, Kenji, to give us an update of what's going on at TEPCO. So with that fairly long introduction, let me hand the microphone over first to Toyoda-san. Toyoda-san, METI is going to, and the government is going to start a new planning exercise. So if you could introduce us to the background, and as we follow the news from Japan, what do we need to look out for? Thank you. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Sheda-sensei, for your invitation and also kind and detailed introduction of mine. I'm happy to be here and discuss government energy plan. The question may be whether or not it can work. That's another question. But let me share my. Does it work? Okay. What I am going to explain to you today is a 2040 energy mix plan, but it is not yet created. And so what I am going to do is, sorry, it doesn't move. How can I, maybe can move, okay. What I'm trying to talk about is three things. One, 2030 energy mix in Japan. We have a plan. The question is whether or not it can be realized. And the second, issues to be considered for making 2040 energy mix. And the third, possible 2040 energy mix in Japan. This is my simply personal view. About 2030 energy mix plan, when we try to create this energy mix as a sort of member of a governmental advisory committee in July 2015, we try to have 4 premises, 3E plus S. This is so-called 3E plus S, energy security, economic cost, and environment. And safety, for sure. And with respect to 3E, we had some sort of quantitative targets. For instance, energy security, we try to increase self-sufficiency ratio up to 25%. Actually, after the Fukushima accident, all the nuclear energy plant was shut down, and so it went down to almost 6% only for renewable energy. So we try to recover self-sufficiency ratio up to 25%, the level before the March 2011. And with respect to economic cost, after the nuclear accident, power rate went up. And so the target is to lower the power rate to the present level, which means the level of 2015. And the environment, the greenhouse gas emission reduction target should be comparable to European and US target. The base year is different, the target year is different, but we could somehow try to have a comparable level of reduction. And European countries, they have 40% reduction up to 2030. The base year is 1990. The US targets 26 or 28%. to 2025 compared with 2005. The base year is different, the target is different, but somehow we could have a comparable level of reduction, which is 26%. And safety, it's a qualitative target. Somehow, because of the public acceptance, we try to lower the share of nuclear energy as much as possible. And this is a result. Please look at the first electricity mix. In order to attain those three quantitative targets, we could have some sort of um, um, uh, uh, equation calculation, and 44% need to be zero carbon, 22, 24 renewable energy, 22, 20 for nuclear. And then it can be translated into primary energy supply, almost half for those renewable energy, nuclear energy share, and the rest is fossil fuel. But we could reduce CO2 by having energy conservation as well, about 10% energy conservation. And so 26% reduction need to be realized. Then what shall we do with respect to 2040 energy mix? The discussion, deliberation at the advisory committee is not yet started, but perhaps this autumn the deliberation will start. And here are five issues to be considered. Energy saving, how far we can go, renewable energy, zero carbon energy, how much we can increase, nuclear, can we achieve 2030 target, and then what shall we do? And blue hydrogen ammonia, can we make it affordable? At this moment, it is expensive. And coal-fired plant, which is not very popular, but we abandon or decarbonize. Those five issues need to be resolved. But the big difference between 2030 energy mix and 2040 energy mix is we need more zero carbon energy, because the government has committed to reduce GHG by 80% by 2050. And so we have to have a sort of middle point for 2040. With respect to energy saving, Japan has a good reputation in terms of energy intensity, and compared with US, EU, Japan is much, much better, particularly in industry side and automobile side. Energy efficiency is showing a very good performance. But if you look at the respective country efforts, UK is much better than Japan. So there is still considerable room for energy saving, particularly in the area of building sector. And renewable energy, many people think solar is everywhere and wind power is everywhere, but that is not the case, unfortunately. If you look at these charts, first the solar power, North Africa, Middle East, the red portion is showing that you have a lot of solar power. And California, unfortunately, you have a very good solar power, and Australia, but unfortunately not Japan, not Southeast Asia. And with respect to wind power, Northern Europe has a quite rich wind power, and perhaps Western North part of North America is good, but again, not necessarily Asia and Japan. So, which means capacity factor may not be so high in Japan or in Southeast Asia. And because of that, the cost of solar PV or wind power are not very much low in Japan. If you look at this chart and this chart, you could see as far as Japan is concerned, nuclear is the cheapest energy, and then coal comes. and then gas comes, and solar PV and wind power. So if we try to increase renewable energy, we have to think about the cost. That's a very important point. Nuclear energy, um, as I said already, all the reactors were shut down after the accident. And now, under the new authority, regulatory authority, gradually the operation has been started. And we have 9 reactors in operation and 7 reactors in a waiting list. And so the question is whether or not we could attain 22% target for 2030. And so we have to speed up operation. In my view, it is possible. It is not easy, but it is possible. And for blue hydrogen ammonia, since we have some limitation in terms of zero carbon renewable energy, zero carbon nuclear, we need another zero carbon energy, which is hydrogen. Hydrogen can be produced from various resources, and it can be utilized for many purposes, not only for power generation, but also for transportation as well. And it is very good for oil producing country, gas producing country, even coal producing country, because they can continue to utilize a fossil fuel. It wouldn't be a stranded asset. And so Middle East is very much happy to develop this technology. The challenge is the cost. At this moment, zero carbon hydrogen from fossil fuel is 3 times more expensive than their comparable energy, gasoline or gas. And so we have to reduce the cost. But unfortunately, if you utilize ammonia as a carrier, we can continue to utilize existing supply chain. And so the cost is smaller. And we understand at our institute, it can be commercialized before 2025. And so it's quite possible for us to use more zero carbon hydrogen. And in addition to that, I'd like to refer to carbon recycling technology, which is to capture CO2 and then use CO2 as resources. One good example is concrete curing. When we make concrete, we utilize quite a lot of cement, but we reduce the amount of cement, and instead of cement, we would put CO2 as resources, and then concrete can be solidified. And so value added is here, and CO2 can be reduced. And so there are many carbon recycling technology like this. And so we have to promote this sort of technology. And what shall we do, coal-fired plant? My suggestion is that coal-fired plant can be decarbonized through 3 steps. First step, introduction of high efficiency coal-fired plant. Second step, we could co-fire with zero carbon ammonia or hydrogen, and 20% burning and 20% reduction of CO2, 50% co-burning, 50% reduction. And finally, we would use carbon recycling technology. We would capture CO2 and utilize them as a sort of resources. And having said that, this is my personal view about the possible 2040 energy mix. First, energy saving. We have to make further efforts, 10% reduction for 2030, perhaps 20% reduction for 2040. And so energy consumption can be reduced. And having said that, we have 3 zero carbon energy. Not only renewable energy, nuclear, and blue hydrogen ammonia. And renewable energy, we could increase perhaps up to 35 or 40%. If we go beyond that, perhaps the cost is quite huge. And nuclear, because of public acceptance, because of the speed of operation, it's better to keep the target as it is for 2030. And blue hydrogen or ammonia, we could increase the share from 0 to 10 or 50% for power generation, and 10 or 50% for transportation, or including carbon recycling, other technologies. And coal-fired plant, what would happen? 25% target for 2030. Even if we continue to use those plants, excuse me, with zero carbon ammonia, 10% or 50% ammonia, and then we can reduce the share of coal to around 10 or 50%. And by doing that, we could reduce zero carbon, we could increase the share of zero carbon energy with respect to electric mix, 70%, the primary energy mix of 50%, and 3E plus S, we could increase energy security, self-sufficiency ratio up to 30%, and economic cost, we could keep the power rate lower than 2015 level, and environment around 50% reduction. So this is perhaps a middle point before 80% reduction realization by 2050. I think I could stop here, and I would like to discuss with Shere Sensei and Tateiwa-san on this particular issue. Thank you very much for listening.
Should I move on with my
Thank
presentation?
you very much. Yeah, please, Tateiwa-san from TEPCO. I'll need to spotlight you, but I think I can do that. Hang on a second.
Okay, yeah, while you set up, thank you very much, Professor Shade, for this great opportunity. And it's a great honor and pleasure to speak with a prominent figure in Japan, Toyoda-san. So in my presentation, I'll first provide you with a context of the environment surrounding Japanese utilities and an overview of TEPCO's current business given the situation. And I will also provide my personal perspectives regarding Japan's 2040 energy mix. So my background, I'll skip because Professor Shade provided a very nice introduction, but I'm a nuclear engineer, but I'm currently working at the TEPCO Power Grid division, working in the transmission and distribution sector. So in Japan, in the Japanese utility, we call it the mega trends impacting us, the Japanese utilities. Initially, the Japanese utilities, we were vertically integrated utilities in a so-called utility 1.0 era. But deregulation started in 1995 and gradually implemented. And in 2016, the full regulation of retail business has been implemented. And this year in April, the unbundling of the transmission and distribution sector has been implemented, making us into the utility 2.0 era in the world of competitive markets and network unbundling. In addition to the deregulation, there are other megatrends that start with the letter D, such as decarbonization, decentralization, digitalization, depopulation, and also natural disasters, including typhoons and earthquakes. And so the utility, we have to shift ourselves into a utility 3.0 era with new business model encompassing prosumers, resource aggregators, user experience coordinators, and so forth. So with that, what about TEPCO? How is TEPCO trying to cope with this new era of utility 3.0? And given the mega trends that I mentioned in the previous slide, TEPCO proactively decided to reorganize itself into a holding company structure in 2016, as shown in this slide. And I'll briefly explain what each company under the TEPCO holdings are carrying out in the following slides. First, TEPCO Power Grid, where I currently work for. TEPCO Power Grid's mission is to provide high quality power transmission and distribution services at low cost. With regard to high quality, you can see over here, the average duration of the power outage is a world low, 19 minutes per year. However, including last year, there have been several huge typhoons impacting the TEPCO Power Grid service areas. So we have to enhance our resilience against natural disaster. TEPCO Energy Partner is a retail arm of TEPCO Holdings, under TEPCO Holdings, and Energy Partner is Japan's largest retailer of electricity and also the fourth largest retailer of gas. However, if you can see from this graph, no, actually this graph over here at the left-hand side, electricity sales have been declining these the recent years, due to new entrants, which is one of the largest challenges that Energy Partner is facing currently. TEPCO Renewable Power was just recently established in April of this year, having a current portfolio of renewable power consisting of hydropower, solar power, and wind. But currently, it's predominantly hydro domestically. However, TEPCO Renewable Power is aspiring to expand its business to offshore wind, both domestically in Japan and also abroad, in the order of 2 to 3 gigawatts each in Japan and outside of Japan. TEPCO Fuel and Power, now called JERA, after a joint venture was formed with Chubu Electric back in 2015, with both companies' thermal power and fossil fuel procurement business, that came together to form JERA, and the complete integration was finished last year in 2019, making JERA Japan's largest thermal power generator and LNG purchaser by far. And the liquefied natural gas value chain is one of the core competencies of JERA. Talking about TEPCO Holdings, nuclear power is under the responsibility of TEPCO Holdings. TEPCO owned and operated 17 nuclear units prior to the Fukushima nuclear accident. However, all 6 units at Fukushima Daiichi and all 4 units at Fukushima Daini will be decommissioned. With regard to restart of the nuclear reactors, TEPCO is currently undergoing safety enhancement work and licensing process in preparation of the units 7 and 6 of Kashiwazaki Kariwa nuclear power station restart. Fukushima Daiichi decommissioning is another important responsibility under TEPCO Holdings. And currently, the decommissioning of the crippled reactors and also management of the massive amount of water on site is making progress. Just to name a few progresses made, for Unit 4, more than 1,500 fuels were in the spent fuel pool. However, all of these fuels have been safely removed in 2014. And currently, TEPCO is focusing on the removal of fuels from the Unit 3 spent fuel pool. Fukushima revitalization is also under TEPCO Holdings. Economic recovery of the Fukushima region and nuclear compensation are 2 of the major tasks under the Fukushima Revitalization Organization. So with all the aforementioned challenges, TEPCO is committed to increasing corporate value in a sustainable way. And in order to do so, TEPCO is aspiring to transform into an ambidextrous organization, combining both a conservative exploitation and exploratory innovation. And by the way, this book written by Professor Charles O'Reilly, whom I learned at the Stanford Business School more than about 17 years ago. He is an advocate of this ambidextrous concept. And in fact, this book has become TEPCO senior management's Bible, to must-read book. So the following slides are some of my personal views with regard to Japan's 2040 energy mix. And rather than stating some numbers, what percentage should be nuclear, thermal, renewable, and so forth, I've been thinking about how to think about the energy strategy. And reading the book, The Black Swan and Anti-Fragile by Nicholas Taleb, I came to the conclusion that in this VUCA world, the volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity world, Japan needs an anti-fragile energy infrastructure, meaning if there are some black swan events happening in an unexpected manner, rather than failing in a fragile manner, or better than a robust structure which can respond and come back, an anti-fragile energy system could increase its value under these black swan events. And how is it possible? So I've been thinking about this, and putting on my MBA hat, I made this anti-fragile energy mix matrix, having hedging factor in the x-axis and real option value in the y-axis. And this anti-fragility equals hedging factor times real option value. This is my own formula, which has to be proven. But putting the various energy resources in this matrix, currently Japan and TEPCO's energy portfolio is bundled in this fragile quadrant, whereas both TEPCO and Japan needs to move into this anti-fragile area with more diverse energy resources, small and distributed power plants, and other energy platforms, including offshore. But it should be a portfolio with both these legacy infrastructure plus the new anti-fragile structure. So one example that I've been thinking that could be part of the anti-fragile strategy is this concept of power to gas to ship. So power to gas has been discussed intensely around the world, generating hydrogen gas by electrolysis of water by power. But it has this difficulty of setting up the infrastructure to transport the hydrogen gas. So my idea is, in addition to generating power by renewable or low carbon power sources on offshore energy platforms, using hydrolysis and generating hydrogen, as Toyoda-san mentioned, I think it makes sense to change hydrogen into ammonia as energy carrier, but not just transporting ammonia to onshore demand, but actually providing either hydrogen or ammonia as fuel for the tankers or ships themselves. Given that the International Maritime Organization has set out their mandates to reduce greenhouse gas emission from vessels 50% by 2050, I think there's a possibility to align the interests of the these shipping industry by changing the ships to use fuel cells for mobility. And then not only using hydrogen and ammonia generated in these offshore energy platforms as fuels, send more hydrogen and ammonia to onshore usage, such as fuel cell vehicles, or as Toyoda-san mentioned, burn ammonia together with coal in existing thermal power plants and make those legacy thermal power assets green thermal power, in order to, that would alleviate the risk of divestment for the utilities having a large amount of asset that could be stranded in the form of thermal power plants. So in summary, the mega trends that starts with the letter D are impacting Japanese utilities. And in response, TEPCO is transforming into an ambidextrous organization to increase the corporate value in a sustainable way. And by the way, my transition from the TEPCO nuclear division to Paragrid is part of TEPCO's intention to realize this ambidextrous organization, as I will be spearheading a novel project that would combine distributed computing and renewable energy. So we'll see how it goes. And the two last bullet points are anti-fragile strategy, I think, is necessary to cope with the VUCA world, and power to gas to ship concept may provide part of a solution. And I'll be very interested to have follow-up discussions with Professor Seid and Toyoda-san. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's see whether I can make sure that everybody can see all of us. Yes, I think that's fair enough. So thank you for these great introductory remarks. And it's really a lot going on. We have some questions from the audience coming in, and I will try to weave those into our conversations. And so the first question is actually one that Jonathan just asked, and I have it as well, which is, why is it that so many people think that Japan does not have a good energy plan? What do you think are the biggest misconceptions from abroad of Japan's energy policy?
Well, I'm not sure, but as I showed you, we have energy plan. Every 3 years or 4 years, we need to devise. And I'm sure Tanaka-san knows that. And so Tanaka-san need to say, Japanese government has a plan, but the question is whether or not the plan can be realized. And so I hope it can be realized. And I'm sure Tanaka-san knows he's a very good friend of mine. And so maybe he's a little bit sarcastic about that.
Oh, he just wants to have a good discussion, right? But there are lots of media from abroad that also say the same thing, right? And I'm wondering whether it's just that Japan is more careful and slower. So I'm sitting in California. We're in the middle of a heat wave, and we have rolling blackouts. And the reason it's a sort of a perfect storm. It's a very hot climate situation this week. Because of the lockdown, people are working from home, so they need a lot of their air conditioning. But it is also that the state of California has decided that we will have 30% renewable energy, and also close down some of our nuclear power plants. So we just don't have enough power in California. And I'm wondering whether so this, if TEPCO did that, and Tokyo would not. Yeah, I see Kenji laughing. I mean, that's impossible. That must not happen. And safety is one of your energy security is one of your S's in your equation. And so I wonder whether it has something to do with Japan being so careful and deliberate in these plans and cautious in its approaches, and that people are just a little bit impatient from the outside. Is that possible?
Are you questioning to
me? Yeah, let's say
well,
you're the CEO of Anakin. You're getting a lot of these.
Well, I think first the question is whether or not the 2030 energy target can be realized, and well, renewable energy share is increasing, and probably it can be realized. The question, many people are questioning whether 20% nuclear share can be realized. And as I said, it is going on very slowly, but it can be possible. And so we have to speed up, but we can realize. And the question is whether or not many countries have such a national energy plan. Actually, it is not. I think even United States doesn't have an energy plan at a national level. California may have, and European Union, they have renewable energy target, but not necessarily they have a region-wide plan. And so actually, I think Japan is one of the very limited number of countries which have national plan. But the question is whether it is realized. And so unless we have a plan, we cannot make efforts to realize that. And so I think it's fine. And with respect to a blackout in California, I don't know, I really would like to have a view from Tateiwa-san, but I think one of the problems which we are facing, every country is facing, is that market mechanism is not perfect. And liberalization of electricity market or gas market can realize the optimum situation. And actually, it is not the case. I think a lot of competition is needed, but too much competition would reduce the profits of respective power company, and they don't invest sufficiently. And so the shortage of investment in terms of power generation, in terms of grid, is a challenge for every country. And so some countries in Europe, like UK, they try to have some sort of modification of market reform. They are saying reforming the market reform. And by doing that, one good example is a contract for difference. They try to give a sort of predictability about the future scenario, and they somehow try to provide subsidy for power generation, particularly for renewable energy and nuclear, and to some extent power grid as well. And in Japan, power grid can be subsidized by other ratepayers, and so the government is simply try to make a rule, and actually a company would realize that. But I would like to have a view from Tateiwa-san as a company.
Yeah, thank you, Toyoda-san. So let me quickly make 2 points from the point of view of typical power grid or the transmission and distribution companies. As you mentioned, Toyoda-san, it used to be, and still the transmission and distribution sector is regulated. So whatever cost could be passed on to the ratepayers theoretically. However, if, for example, typical power grid were to upgrade our grid system to make it very robust and resilient against natural disasters, then the ratepayers will have to pay a lot of money, which would lead to more, for example, distributed power usage, and the customers using the transmission grid would shy away from usage, which would not be good for the T&D business point of view. So there's a dilemma there. So and power grid, typical power grid, we are committed to lowering the cost for the ratepayers. However, how to balance it with high quality resilient system is a huge challenge. That's the first point, balancing resilience and high quality and low cost. The second point is introduction of renewable energy sources. Having solar and wind in Japan, it's great, but currently across Japan, we are finding out constraints of connecting the various renewable power sources to the grid. And in order to send the electricity generated by solar and wind from rural parts of Japan to the central demand areas in Tokyo or Osaka, the power grid needs to be upgraded, which costs money. And do you want to have more renewable but higher cost of transmission? And that's another dilemma that the entire industry is facing right now.
So, Toyoda-san, last time we talked about this, you pointed out that no energy source is perfect, right? And there's a cost-benefit analysis to each and all, you know. So solar is only at daytime, then we need storage. Wind, similar thing.
Mhm.
We're getting a lot of questions on hydrogen, and
Mhm.
they range from the simplistic, which is mine, namely that do all countries talk about hydrogen in the way that Japan is? I mean, is there a discussion? Is this a global trend, or is this a Japanese specific thing? And then the questions are, and I'll give you some. You can pick what you want to answer. Max wants to know more about hydroelectricity, whether that is a thing or how you think about it. And then you talked a little bit about green. There's a question from Anne about whether the input materials for hydrogen are themselves also polluting. So if you needed to use brown coal, and how you think about green. And so can you talk a little bit more about sort of the larger and also the more, sort of some of the detailed issues about hydrogen? Maybe Toyoda-san go first, and then
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much for important question. I think now, amazingly, hydrogen is getting fashionable. Maybe surprisingly, exception is the United States. I think in Europe, EU has a hydrogen strategy, and Germany, UK, they have a strategy. And Japan started talking about the hydrogen strategy about 3 years ago. And they tried to hold annual hydro ministerial conference, and I'm sure representative from DOE is participating, and so I'm sure as a government they know, but it is rather strange. You have a lot of fossil fuel. But why not using fossil fuel for the future? I think if we try to decarbonize the whole society, whole energy, somehow we have to decarbonize hydrocarbon. And Middle East is quite interested in hydrogen, and Australia, they have. So a lot of countries have great interest in hydrogen. With respect to green hydrogen, we welcome any kind of color. The cheaper, the better. But from the standpoint of Japan, we need to import either green hydrogen, blue hydrogen, which is much cheaper, which could be more abundant. And we tend to think for the moment, at least the blue hydrogen, we tend to say blue hydrogen, it's a hydrogen from fossil fuel, could be more abundant and much cheaper. And IEA publicized the report last year, and it is saying for the moment the blue hydrogen is cheaper, and so that's why we are focusing on green hydrogen, but not necessarily we are repudiating green hydrogen, the value of green hydrogen. But green hydrogen perhaps it's a water electrolysis. It's very expensive, and we try to use solar PV or wind power, and then it's intermittent, and so the capacity factor may not be very high, and so the cost is a challenge, and clearly in the future it could be reduced, and then we welcome both blue hydrogen and green hydrogen. With respect to the second question, hydropower, I think at this moment, even now, we have 8% of power generation is from hydro. But at this moment, not many who number of plans for a large hydro facility, because anti-environmentalist doesn't like it, and people living close to hydropower dam don't like it, and so it is completely difficult for us to construct new ones, and a small one may be okay, digestible, but not huge one. And so already, as I said, and as Pierre Sensor said, any energy is not perfect. We still using hydropower, but we could not increase anymore in a substantial manner. That's the point. I hope I could answer to your questions.
Kenji, do you want to comment on this?
Yeah, so let me quickly comment. First on the hydrogen, I think it'll be great if we could provide a cheap, affordable green hydrogen. But as Toyoda-san mentioned, there are challenges. I think from a utility point of view, for example, changing the transportation sector or decarbonizing transportation sector, the utilities are focusing more on electric vehicles rather than fuel cell vehicles. And I think part of it is related to the chicken and egg issue of hydrogen infrastructure, the lack of hydrogen infrastructure in Japan. There aren't many hydrogen gas stations, so therefore it's difficult to form this network effect. So right now it's more for electric vehicles. However, where does this electricity comes from for the EVs? And if we're burning coal, that doesn't make sense. So in the future, I think if we could come up with a way to economically electrolyze water into hydrogen with renewable energy, that would be great. The second point about hydropower, again, as Toyoda-san mentioned, in Japan, there's very limited additional opportunities to develop hydropower. TEPCO Renewable Power is looking into repowering our existing hydropower stations, but maybe just a few percentage points increase. And also some development abroad, but domestically, I think it's limited.
Thank you. We got some questions. Robbie has a set of questions that pertain to the competitiveness of TEPCO and how regulated the market is. He points out that METI is putting a lot of effort into offshore wind sources and that sort of thing. He also, at the same time, NTT apparently has a new energy subsidiary called Anode Energy. So what is, and then there's all this innovation, right? So TEPCO now has an open innovation division where you know, TEPCO invests in new innovative sources. And it's not as if TEPCO is this big old company that's sitting still and twiddling its thumbs, right? So there's a lot going on, but how competitive can a large electric power company really be?
Yeah, great. Tough question. So for one, I'm trying to prove how TEPCO can be competitive. It's a work in progress. But the TEPCO senior management understands the issue, understands we have to transform ourselves from a big, slow-moving dinosaur into a more nimble, innovative company. And in an ambidextrous way, because we do have to continue with our stable, safe supply of electricity, but also compete with competitors such as the NTT group companies, as you just mentioned. So there are many initiatives inside TEPCO, such as nurturing entrepreneurs or intrapreneurs, in-company entrepreneurs to come up with creative business plans. And the TEPCO senior management commits a lot of resource, time, money to educate and train, especially young workers, TEPCO employees, who could in the future transform our company.
Great. That's you know, I think people are sometimes a little bit quick of you know, saying something like why doesn't Japan just do this? Like, why doesn't Japan have more wind? Or, you know, why is TEPCO so old-fashioned? And looking a little bit closer is sometimes helpful. I have a question about your personal opinions on something, and that is you've represented the difficulties that are there, and the 3E and the S. And what is your personal 2040 dream vision for Japan? What do you, if you could have, if you could do, if you could write the plan, what would a great situation in 2040 look like? You know, what are some of the possibilities that you could see?
Are you
start or
to Tatewa-san, right?
I'll give it to Toyoda-san.
Okay, let's have Iwa-san start.
Oh, for me? Oh, okay. So as I mentioned in my anti-fragile energy mix, I don't think, well, not I don't think, but my my thought is that rather than putting numbers, as I show here in this matrix, it's more qualitative, having fossil fuel power plants, but trying to make it into green thermal power plants using ammonia and others makes a lot of sense from a business point of view, but also looking into this green area of small distributed power plants, which could be maybe micro hydropower stations and so forth, but these alone would be difficult to supply the bulk of energy. So it's got to be a combination. And what will be the perfect combination will be interdependent of the existing legacy system and the new development. And as some of the participants have written in their comments, there are new innovative technologies that would enable cheap electrolyses and so forth. And in which case, then green hydrogen may form a big circle in this area. So we have to be nimble in flexibly implementing this kind of strategy.
Well, share the sense. I think we simply go back to the year 2015 when we tried to make a recommendation to the government about energy mix 2030. We spent more than 2 years to have an agreement among us, and actually. Some people don't like nuclear. Some people don't like renewable energy, and so there was a sort of dichotomy, and we couldn't come up with any agreed numbers. And so we tried to agree with 3 targets, quantitative targets, and cost zero carbon energy and self-sufficiency ratio. And the government tried to set up cost analyzing committee, and so they have quite a detailed cost analysis. And environment, yes, every energy has numbers for emissions, and if you agree the 3 quantitative targets, you could have a sort of simultaneous equation calculation. So, you know, the last part, only 2 or 3 months, we could come up with the agreement. And so I think the question is how we could agree to 3 quantitative targets, 3E plus S, and particularly 3E. And then all of a sudden we could calculate. And so I think the question is whether or not we could have such a quantitative target in terms of 3 among the people, and particularly respective committee member representing their own constituency, consumers union, etc., etc. And so by doing that, we could have cultivate a sort of consensus. On the basis of emerging consensus, we could have a solution.
Great. Unfortunately, time is up. It's always like our parents told us when we were young, you always have to stop when it's the best part. We got great questions from the audience. Sorry that we couldn't address all, but I'll take a note of them. And let me thank you both of you, Toyoda-san and Tateiwa-san, taking time out of your busy, busy schedules. And thank you, audience, for joining us today. I will show the last slide, I think, hopefully, if I can make it happen. Yes, next week, the Japan Zoomina will feature Professor Amy Boroboy from Princeton. She's a professor of East Asian Studies and Cultural Anthropology, and we will discuss Ruth Benedict, and who was an anthropologist who studied Japan after World War II, and how she has shaped the way we look at Japan. Let me stop the share. Let me thank you again. Thank you very much. And everybody, stay safe, stay well, and see you next week. Goodbye.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Bye-bye.